gentlemen, welcome to Retro Warriors episode 344. Woo. As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by resident old bastard, Chris Saturn.
As always.
Saturn, I'm not quite
Dying.
sick. I'm feeling 90% normal.
Oh.
I still have snot.
Isn't that the same number you gave a few weeks ago, though?
I don't know. I feel like that was a soft 90. I feel okay. I still got like snot packed in my head, but
Right.
if I didn't know I was still like recently sick, I would just assume it was allergies.
Oh, that's nice.
So that's good. That's kind of where I've landed with it. I've been prescribed so many medicines.
Yeah.
So things are finally looking up. My daughter, today was the first day this year that her nose was not so runny that she had a rash under it at the end of the day.
That's exciting.
So she came home and she's just like, "Daddy, my nose." So that felt good.
Most of the time when children come home and say, "Daddy, my nose," they're holding it in their hand.
Yeah, it's been lopped off.
Yeah.
Right. It's that common childhood occurrence. So yeah, I did just want to mention that. So that's
I'm
good.
glad you're almost back to normal.
I did have to plan a trip for in May, and as I was planning it, I was like, well, maybe COVID will be a little better by then. And then I laughed.
I am still not at the point where I am feeling comfortable going anywhere or doing anything. Like, I don't even want to go into stores anymore at this point.
Well, I was telling Andrew, at this point, I've had everything in a very small window, so I think I'm invincible right now.
No.
I've got like 2 weeks of invincible antibodies, and then I'm going to get sick
weeks.
again.
Exactly.
My
I'm
week.
glad you're recovering.
Yes, I'm well on my way.
Yes.
I picked up several new long-term prescriptions along the way, but
Yay.
you know, it's
Hooray.
here we are, getting old.
Yeah.
Oh, it's that you got sick once, and now you have to take this forever. That's weird.
You're going to have to get you one of those pill trays that has all the days of the week lined up.
Oh man, I already need one of those. I take so many pills. I think I take like 5 or 6 pills at night every night. Granted, like one of them's a vitamin, one of them's a Mucinex, one of them's a Zyrtec. I'm not like taking.
So bad.
I'm not like slamming down half a bottle of lithium at bedtime or whatever. You know, like I'm not.
Maybe you should. Maybe
I'm
you
not
should.
quite. I'm not quite that far gone yet. Maybe one day I'll get
Right.
there. Anyway, my week. I've been playing a whole bunch of Fantasy Zone 2.
Nice. Which we talked about on the 2 episodes ago.
We did, and man, gosh, it's so good.
Yeah.
And I hate my 2DS. Since getting my 2DS, I transferred everything to it and then hacked my old 3DS, and then just haven't really put in much in the way of hours on the 2DS yet. And I realized I don't like it. I don't love the form factor, and also, this is going to sound like the dumbest thing to not realize buying a 2DS, but I use the 3D on my 3DS. Like,
You're right. That did sound like the dumbest thing to realize.
Like I told myself that I wouldn't mind. I told myself that it wouldn't bother me, that it'd be okay, that it'd be whatever, but it bothers me. And my issue is the 2DS is just ever so slightly smaller. It's not quite as tall.
So why did you transfer things from your perfectly working 3DS to the 2DS and then hack the 3DS when you could have just hacked the 2DS?
That 3DS has some miles on it. I mean, that thing was always in a pocket or a backpack for years.
Is it a new 3DS?
It is a new. So since it came out, until the Switch came out, it was toted everywhere. So it's a little banged up. The hinge is pretty super loose. The buttons and the D-pad are kind of loose. Just, I mean, it's not like destroyed, but it's just, I mean, lots and lots and lots of hours of play on it. And, you know, handhelds just, you know, they just kind of get worn out, you know, whenever you put in like 500 hours on one.
I've always been super ultra cautious with all my handhelds. They don't leave my house unless they're in a padded case, and when I use them, I make sure to be super ultra careful with them. So most of my handhelds still look pretty close to when I bought them.
No, mine don't. No, that's why I play handhelds, is because they can go everywhere and anywhere with me.
Yeah. Like my GBA SP still looks pretty much the same way as it did when I first opened it.
Mm-hmm.
But
no, with handhelds, Usually I buy a few of them. So I'll buy one and I'll use it for 3 or 4 years and then it'll get worn out or beat up. And then by then I can buy another one for like $90, you know? And that's just how I've always kind of, I mean, like, again, they're not just like, if you saw it, you wouldn't be like, oh my God, what's wrong with your 3DS, right? But it's got some miles on it. And I was like, well, you know, I know 3DSs are going to become hard to find.
They're already starting to.
It would be nice to have one in like, because now I don't cart my 3DS everywhere.
Right.
If I'm going to cart a system, it's probably my Switch. And so I was like, it'd be nice to have like a minty one that I keep at home to play 3DS when I feel like it, and it just stays in like very good condition.
Yeah.
And then I was like, and if that's what I'm going to be doing, then I'll put all my legitimate software titles on it, and everything will be. And so when I feel like going back to 3DS, I've got this nice new minty fresh system to play on, and that'll keep me going in perpetuity.
Right. And
I just don't like it. It's just small enough that I feel like I can't get a good grip on it with my big hands.
Yeah.
And so I ordered the same brand of grip that I have on my 3DS that I love. And it's by the people that make the Retro Freak, Cyber Gadget. Yeah. And it's only available in Japan. And so I ordered it from Amazon Japan, and DHL teleported it here in like a day.
Yeah.
And I put that handle on, and it made it worse. Because here's the thing, the 3DS handle, the way they have made the handles on this grip is they kind of flare outward, right? The same way that a normal controller does. They're kind of like that subtle sort of boomerang-y, like kind of flared outward thing.
Right.
The 2DS handles are straight.
Weird.
Which makes holding it real uncomfortable. And so I just cannot get comfortable with my 2DS.
You know, I was just thinking, like, I was trying with my hands to do grips that are straight, and I'm like, this doesn't feel so bad. And then after a second, I thought, kind of feels like a Dreamcast controller. And then I remembered how much you hate the Dreamcast controller.
I do.
So, yeah.
And so I was like, all right, well, I want to switch everything back to my 3DS. But my 3DS is fully hacked.
Right.
And I'm nervous that I'm going to need some files on the SD card when I do that transfer. And it's going to brick my shit, you know?
So why don't you unhack your 3DS, just reset it back to factory, do the transfer again, and then hack the 2DS?
I think that's what I'm going to end up doing.
Yeah, there you go.
Because it's been a journey getting to here.
Right.
And of course, when I hacked my old 3DS, it wasn't even that I desperately wanted a hacked 3DS. I was just like, well, my stuff's not on it. I might as well do something with the old one.
Got to tinker with it somehow.
And right after I hacked it, I was like, I own every 3DS game I ever want to play. And I know it can emulate stuff, but if I'm going to emulate, I'll do it on a computer or a GPD or a mini console. Like, I'm not going to do it.
My hacked 3DS is for fan translations.
I just don't.
But I don't think you care that much about Dragon Quest Monsters or Rocket Slime.
No, I mean, I like Rocket Slime. I don't know.
Game.
I don't know. So I guess what I need to research now is how easy it is to unhack my 3DS. Right. And then system transfer everything back.
Yeah, I think you can just install the original firmware again or something like that. So
yeah, so I gotta figure that process out. Other than that, just more Destiny 2.
How's that going?
I hit the level 100 on the season pass.
Fancy.
They do the season pass thing where you play and you get like season pass experience.
I see.
So I maxed that out, and I just want to note that I'm much higher level than Guy is, because I'm so much better than him at the game. And I only really want to say it because he's muted in the chat, right?
Yeah, and he can't say anything because his track isn't getting recorded. Yeah, that's good. That's good of you to give him that chance to respond.
Still enjoying it. It's a good time.
Nice.
Been having a good time with it. You know. What have you been up to?
Well, I got a new mouse. I got the Pro IntelliMouse. The remake of the old IntelliMouse Explorer.
Yes, I'm aware.
Oh man, I love it so much already. I was a huge
Isn't that the one that you were dragging your feet on? Like you didn't want to.
I was like, mostly because I didn't want to go back to wired, but now I just don't care. It feels so good that I'm just willing. If you've ever used an IntelliMouse Explorer back in the day, it's the mouse you're familiar with. It now has the invisible laser instead of the destroy your eyes red laser like the old one. The paint on it has a fade, so it's no longer a solid color, so it looks slightly more modern. And it also has a butt light on it. It calls it a tail light.
A butt light.
And it just illuminates. It's got a little LED, and you can change the color and make it whatever you want. And I was like, well, that's really neat. That makes it look really fancy and classy and modern. And so I set it to a nice, pretty color, and I liked that. And I walked away. And then when I went to bed last night, I rolled over, and there's that fucking butt light illuminating my room. I'm like, well, that won't last. So I had to turn off the butt light. But no, otherwise it's a nice mouse. It's got a braided cable. That's always fancy.
Yeah.
Also, Taiko no Tatsujin came out on Game Pass on both Xbox and PC.
Mm-hmm.
So I was playing some of that, and let me tell you, that's the worst PC port I've seen in years. Like, holy hell. Bamco. What are you doing?
And that's saying a lot, because you play Japanese games.
Well, this is also a Japanese game, for the record.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. Like, you play other Japanese PC games.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, this is bad. So, first of all, the first day that it released on Game Pass, there was an error that prevented it from allowing the login box to show up, which meant that the game was stuck on the title screen and could never progress.
Oh, great. That's nice.
Some fans figured out how to just kind of jimmy in the Xbox code from a different game into it to force it to log in. And then eventually they patched it. And then when they did patch it, I learned that the game always starts at 1080p full screen, no matter your resolution, no matter what you have set the resolution to. And then as soon as it logs in, then it remembers your resolution preferences and changes everything.
Wonderful.
And also it doesn't recognize most of my controllers. It only recognizes the official Xbox One controller or Series X controllers.
Yeah.
Nothing else seems to... So... it's just a poor port. Don't get the PC version of that game. The Xbox version, however, is fine. It's Taiko no Tatsujin. It's exactly what I expected.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. Also, I finished Rise of the Tomb Raider, the second Tomb Raider reboot game.
Yes,
it was fine. The plot.
It's fine. I played it for 1 million hours. It's fine.
I think I put in 20-ish hours, something like that.
Okay, that's okay. That's reasonable.
Yeah. So 2 things I did want to mention about it is one, in the first Tomb Raider reboot game, there's all these little side quests and missions and whatnot that you can do. You can explore like optional tombs and shit, do little puzzly bits, and when you finish them, you get experience that you can use to level up your stats and shit in the game, which is great. And in this one, instead of experience, you go finish an optional area, and you finish the puzzle, and you finally get the reward, and you get there, and instead of it like popping up and being like this much experience, it pops up and is like, here's some card packs to use in our multiplayer version.
Oh God, no!
And I'm like, why would you do that to me? And it was like such a disincentive that I almost didn't even finish the game, but I eventually just ignored that part of the game and did the story. The story does bother me in one way, in these reboot Tomb Raider games, Lara Croft is a mass murderer.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Like in the original games, occasionally you would have to fight a dude, and it was rare. And in these games, she just murders so many people. It's
funny because this is the exact same argument that came up when ludonarrative dissonance was rearing its annual head when the Uncharted games were a big deal.
Right.
People were like, Nathan Drake is a full-on mass murderer.
Right. And I also, one thing about the story that really bugs me, though, is the end of the first game. Like, there's these subtle hints of clues. If you get everything in the first game, you'll find these couple of little subtle hints about this shadowy organization that might be behind some things, and maybe they're tracking what's going on, and they've figured out who Lara is or something. There's just a little bit of a hint there. And so when I finished the first game, I was like, maybe I'll learn more about them in the second game. Yeah. And when you start the second game, the very first cutscene is, so I've been chased by this organization for years. They're everywhere now. Like, I see thousands of them. Anyway, I really got to kill them now.
Oh, no.
And so, skipped all the interesting part of that story.
Right, the development of the bad guy.
And went straight to, now they're everywhere and they hate you. And one thing I realized playing these games is I really hate the combat. because it's got that gameplay loop where it's like explore an area, a bunch of guys will show up, kill them, and then finish the area.
Yeah, find the little secret bit to get out of the area.
Right. If they could just skip the killing dudes area, I would love this game because it would just be exploration and puzzles, and that's clearly what I want in a game.
Yeah,
exploration, platforming, and puzzles. And it just keeps throwing combat at me, and I realize I really don't like the killing dudes part of the game. And
it's that same kind of cycle that you see like a lot of like action games like this with like God of War, I feel like is the first time that I remember really seeing that formula of like it's kind of like if you took Zelda and put in like 70% less puzzles and 70% more combat, like here you are, you know?
Which is honestly, in retrospect, kind of what the first Zelda game was.
Yeah, realistically. Yeah, for sure.
I did, it occurred to me while I was playing it that my big complaint with the original Tomb Raider series, because I've played some of them, but it was never a big fan, was that they always just felt like 3D versions of old cinematic platformers. Like the way she moves feels like Prince of Persia, but in 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
And so my complaint was, it's a cinematic platformer and it's not my style. Right. And I'm playing this one and I'm enjoying it. And there's all these constant cinematic platforming segments where it's like just a quick time event or something in the middle of a giant cinematic set piece.
Of course.
I'm like, oh, this is just the modern day cinematic platformer. Apparently I'm okay with it now. I don't know what happened.
It's fine now. I think what it is, and this is just me totally guessing, is with cinematic platformers in the past, you had to put up with a level of clunkiness.
Yeah.
For them to present the visuals they were trying to present. Right. And now you can present full-on, hyper-realistic HD visuals that are extremely responsive.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably it.
Because like when I go play like old Prince of Persia and stuff, it feels like every animation takes an hour.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to time things when you have all this extra animation that looks great.
Yeah,
but then also it's hard.
They made sure to put in 140 frames of animation in his jump, but also the game runs at 3 frames per second.
So I think just maybe the responsiveness.
Yeah, I can see that. That's a good point.
Let's do the news.
Okay.
Nintendo hits YouTube soundtrack channel with over 1,300 copyright claims. Because Nintendo doesn't want anyone to enjoy anything that they don't have a very strong grip on.
Yeah, they also what bugs me is they shut down like the channel for like the Mother 3 soundtrack. Like what were you gonna do with that?
It's
not
know.
like you're releasing it here.
It's depressing.
Yeah. You missed the Atari NFT story.
Oh, did we? I didn't know if we covered that one on the show or not. Yes. Let me. Atari combines NFTs and loot boxes to celebrate their 50th anniversary.
Nice
I did forget about this one. This one I was sent in from TechSpot.
Yeah.
And they're calling them GFTs.
It's gifts.
And you can log in and get a rare gift from Atari.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yay.
Thanks, Atari.
I knew somebody was going to do it. I can't say I'm surprised that it was Atari.
Combining loot boxes and NFTs?
Right.
You mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess loot boxes already had nothing in them, so you might as well put more nothing in them.
Put a tangible nothing.
Destiny developer Bungie was bought by Sony for $3.6 billion.
This is what happens when I don't write it all out.
When it's not written out nicely. Sony bought Bungie, and that's Kajunga news. It's massive.
Yeah.
Destiny's a big deal, and they just got full crossplay and everything going in the game, so that's a big concern for people like myself who don't play on Sony systems, but I do play Destiny.
Yeah,
as of very recently.
This is Bungie's third owner of note in the last 20 years.
Yeah, Bungie did release a statement saying that they're going to continue to develop independently. They're going to continue offering everything on all these platforms, and of course, in my mind, I read that as we're going to continue doing that on all of these platforms for Destiny 2.
Yeah.
And then when Destiny 3 comes out, who knows what that's going to look like.
I also noticed that as part of the statement, the head of PlayStation, at least for Americas, had made a comment about how they've got the successful live service with Destiny, and that Sony has 10 live services in development now.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
I don't know. I mean, I guess like everyone's like, oh yeah, well Microsoft bought Activision, so Sony is like, guess what? We're gonna buy the Halo people, and it's like, nah, I don't think they're just two ships in the night, just scooping up things as they go by.
And also, I noticed that a lot of people are saying they think they overpaid for Bungie compared to a lot of the other acquisitions lately, like the Zynga acquisition and the Bethesda acquisition. So I can't speak to that personally, but...
well, I mean, here's the thing. Bungie just makes video games.
Right.
They don't make mobile games.
Right.
So I'm sure they did overpay.
They don't own the IP for a lot of their games either, do they?
Yeah. No, they don't own... I mean, Microsoft owns Halo.
Right,
I believe they have the rights to...
Destiny, they definitely have.
Destiny and the Marathon series, which they're kind of their other two big ones. But Marathon
is a little aged.
Yeah, it's I don't want to say totally forgotten, but it's not maybe as remembered as people probably thought it was going to be back in the day.
One thing I would like to say about this is a lot of the attention, like you mentioned a minute ago, is Microsoft buys this company and Sony buys this company. It's some big like purchasing war. I think at this point, especially Microsoft, but probably Sony as well, aren't really seeing each other as the big competitor so much as the emerging companies, the Googles and the Facebooks and the Amazons and all these other companies trying to get into the industry. And I think Microsoft and Sony, as the biggest names in the room, are just trying to make sure that they have enough influence in the industry that they don't get caught behind by somebody's massive money that's coming in.
Yeah.
It's just a theory I have anyway.
I mean, that makes sense. You know, that definitely tracks, you know. But I don't know. And there was a follow-up to this where Sony offered a $1.2 billion retention incentive plan, or pardon me, I believe $1.2 billion of the buyout was for a retention incentive plan.
Which probably explains why some people think it was valued a little high, because that was part of the purchase price.
Yeah, for sure. David Hayter, voice of Solid Snake, well, he used to be anyway,
right?
Is creating an American Mcgee's Alice TV show.
Nice.
For people younger than me that don't remember American Mcgee, he had a game called Alice.
And didn't he also work on Quake?
I don't remember. I think he was like originally a Quake dev, and then he left and started his own stuff. And Alice was like his big pet project, and it just kind of fizzled. Yeah,
he did one other game after that, and I don't for the life of me remember what it was. But it was basically the same thing, but with a different theme. And for those who don't know, this isn't just the voice actor of Snake suddenly deciding to make a TV show. He's been a director for a very long time. He also directed the X-Men movies, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't like some new venture for him.
Yeah. Limited Run Games is opening an 80s themed physical game store. They can't respond to your inquiries about where your game is, but they can open a Blockbuster.
Yeah, that's weird.
It looks cool. I'm glad they're doing it. It's a neat project.
And if you happen to be in North Carolina, I bet it'd be really cool to visit. I think it was North Carolina. It was somewhere in that area anyway.
It is in the northernmost of the Carolinas. That's correct.
That's good. But it's far enough away that I can't imagine I would make the trip for that.
Yeah. Final Fantasy VII Imitator Shadow Madness releases on Steam on February 15th. I didn't even know what this was.
Oh my god, it's such a bad game.
Oh, it looks terrible. It does look like the shittiest Final Fantasy VII clone that's somehow getting remade.
Right. So if you're not familiar with this one, after Chrono Trigger came out, Squaresoft just unceremoniously shut down their US branch. They were done with it. They were like, we don't need American employees anymore. We're not going to release games in America anymore. We're done with it. Just, you're all fired. Get out.
Yeah.
And then when Final Fantasy VII was coming over, they reopened a U.S. branch. We're like, maybe we do need American staff. And all of the jaded former staff that had worked in the Super NES era were like, well, we don't even need Final Fantasy.
Turns out you do.
Yeah, because the game they made was just hot garbage. Holy shit. It's bad.
The Pokemon company started a Pokemon music streaming service, unfortunately named Pokemon DP. Which, of course, as we all know, DP on the internet stands for Diamond and Pearl.
Right. Yeah,
Pokemon Diamond and Pearl sound library.
Yes.
That you can use in music creation and personal videos. So it's like Nintendo comes in and punches you in the face and then wants to apologize for punching you in the face.
One story you accidentally skipped over was the emulator Duck Station is now dead, and its GitHub repository was basically shut down, which is sad. Oof. Apparently, it was due to a squabble with RetroArch, and I'm not going to take sides on that because it sounds like both sides have some valid criticisms, but also both sides are being a little petty. So it's unfortunate because that's a good emulator.
Yeah. EA somehow being the good guy again. Just a few months after saying that NFTs are the future of the game industry, EA CEO Andrew Wilson said that they are not driving on, in air quotes, NFTs right now.
Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see how well they do with their first NFTs, and then we'll see what they do after that.
Nintendo Switch outsells Wii and PlayStation. Passes 100 million faster than any other home console.
That's pretty good.
That is good for the Switch.
Right.
I like this one. Bloodborne PlayStation remake or demake passes 100,000 downloads in less than a day, meaning it's almost assuredly going to get cease and desisted.
Yeah, I'm shocked Sony hasn't yet. Maybe they just don't care.
I don't know, but
which would be weird from Sony.
It's a cool project.
Yeah.
And people that know and play Bloodborne say it plays really good.
Yeah.
And there's a new NES game called Beavis 2.
No, it's Yeah Beavis.
Yeah Beavis 2.
Yes.
It's the sequel to something called Yeah Beavis, which I've never heard of before this.
Okay, all right. Well, now I get to tell the story of Yeah Beavis. All right, so back in the late 80s and early 90s, in the back of video game magazines were these catalogs for these mail order video game companies where you could buy and sell video games. And Funko was one of them before they had a ton of stores everywhere. And one of these companies, among all the other new release listings, listed a game called Yeah Beavis 1. And nobody knew what it was. Nobody could figure out what it was. For years, people have tried to figure out what it was. And the prevailing theory was always it was a fake entry put in so that they could see if anybody else was copying their game list.
Yeah.
Which is probably what it is. It may have also been a bad translation of some random garbage game that was never going to come out here in the first place. But either way, like Bioforce Ape and all these other dumb, stupid games that didn't come out that people were super excited about for some reason, there was this community that really wanted to figure out what the fuck Yeah Beavis 1 is and where it went and if it ever existed and all this stuff. So this dude made his own NES game, and just for funsies, he named it Yeah Beavis 2, just so that it could finally get a sequel.
Here's hope for the trilogy. 5% of Capcom acquired by Saudi Arabia's public investment fund. They've been kind of pumping some money into the game industry.
They have.
It's been a thing that's been going around, so you know. Apparently, they also have big stakes in Activision Blizzard.
Right. Well, did,
yeah. Anyway. And then finally, we're hearing multiple reports that Google is ditching Stadia, that it is going away, that it is dead.
Yeah. So
or dying, which I think we've all been saying for a year.
Right. So apparently Business Insider was the ones who, quote, broke this story. And they said that internal staff at Google, former employees, are quoted as saying that Google is pivoting away so that the Stadia project will continue, but 80% of it will be going towards white label stuff where it's not sold to the consumer, it's sold to another business, and 20% of it will be the traditional consumer front. And finally something broke through to the Stadia fans, and they realized, oh, maybe things aren't so rosy over here.
As it turns out, it's been shitty.
Right? And also another big name release was canceled on Stadia. I don't remember which one it was, but something that was close to release. They were like, "Sorry, we can't make it on Stadia." Oh no!
Isn't Stadia just PC on the back end?
It is a custom Linux based environment. Apparently, it runs off of a server processor instead of a consumer processor. Is the big hang up.
That's odd. So they have to kind of figure that out, I guess.
Yeah.
Because for people that don't know, server processors usually have a lot of horsepower in them, but they're not geared.
Yeah, they don't have
geared for running games.
Right, they don't have a lot of the specific tool set that you might find in a consumer grade processor that a lot of companies use as a cheat to make their games a little easier to program.
Which brings us to the topic at hand.
Yeah.
This week we're talking about Maxis, which means we're also talking about Will Wright.
It's hard to talk about one without talking about the other.
And I feel like we do a Will Wright episode?
We did not.
Have we? I don't know why I feel like we have.
We did a SimCity episode.
I think it's just because I feel like I know Will Wright.
Yeah, well, that's because you grew up with him.
It's because
down the street.
He's my buddy.
He was your art teacher.
So as far as synopsis, we're basically going to talk about the Sims people. You guys know the Sims. Well, maybe younger people don't know the Sims because it's not really much of a thing anymore. But for people Saturn's age, it's SimCity. For people my age, it was the Sims.
I think the Sims 4 still sells pretty well.
I imagine so. Yeah, that kind of seems like one of those evergreen sort of titles that's not like groundbreaking, but just kind of always sells.
Yeah.
As far as kind of initial encounters with Maxis, I know I played SimCity at school as a kid. I remember we were doing some kind of learning in school, like you do. And it was something about like cities or city planning or just something, infrastructure, something. And we played SimCity to like demonstrate how cities work.
Wish I could have played SimCity in school.
And and I remember being like, this is the coolest fucking thing that has ever happened. We are learning by playing a video game, but it's not one of those dumb, lame-ass learning video games like Math Blasters or Mighty Math Number Heroes or Zoombinis. It's a fun video game.
Right.
And so I encountered Maxis, but I didn't I didn't have the game at home. I didn't recognize Maxis. Like if you've been like, who made SimCity, I wouldn't have known. I mean, we're talking like this was maybe 5th grade at the latest.
Yeah.
And then when The Sims came out, I literally, I know I've told the story on the Sims episode, but I was in Sam's Club with my dad, and we walked by this big display of The Sims, and I was like, I want this, and I got it. Nice. And in retrospect, my dad wouldn't have spent $50 on it, so it might have actually been a little while after release. It might have been marked down or something. I don't know. But I got it, and that's when I was like, oh my God, Maxis is amazing. And played the crap out of the first 2 Sims, and I played a decent amount of Sims 3.
Yeah.
And then that was when I exited. We're really about the time they rebooted SimCity. And you were like, it's the worst. And I was like, all right, I'm done. I'm not even going to look anymore. And then that was that.
Yeah, I think I probably saw the previews for NES SimCity and Nintendo Power, but I first played SimCity on Super NES, which was shortly after the launch of the Super NES, and that got me super hooked on that specific game. Which then, when I finally got a computer that could play games that weren't Commodore games, SimCity was one of the first ones we got. We got it from a local used software store. For like $5 or $10, we got SimCity, and it was the print of SimCity for DOS that came with both the 3.5-inch floppy and the 5 1/4-inch floppy. So my aunt had given us an old work computer that she no longer needed, which was the old 1980 model IBM 8086 with the black and green monitor.
Oh boy!
And so I loaded SimCity on that, and it ran.
Oh my God!
It ran like shit, but it was still SimCity, and I could play that one in my bedroom instead of having to wait for my mom to wake up.
Go ahead.
But yeah, as after that, anytime I saw any Sim whatever, that got my attention, which just led me to looking for the logo specifically.
Yeah, I had after I played The Sims for a while, and then I ended up getting SimCity 2000.
Right. which
And
we
then
had an episode about not long ago.
At some point, I bought some like Maxis multi-pack.
There were a lot of those.
And mine had Streets of SimCity, SimCopter, and it might have been what SimCity 2000 came in. It just had like 3 or 4 random Maxis games.
Yeah.
And I played a bunch of them.
Yeah.
And I remember always kind of being like, well, they're kind of shitty. But Sims and SimCity is good. I liked Streets of SimCity a lot. I played that one a whole bunch. But yeah, let's talk Will Wright, his kind of where he came from and before he did the whole Maxis thing.
Yeah. So he was born on January 20th, 1960 in Atlanta, Georgia, and then moved to Louisiana early in his life. Graduated high school at age 16 in Baton Rouge. That's pretty young for high school, you know.
It's a couple years off. Yeah, American high school, 16 is normally you graduate at 18.
And then he went to various higher education schools in both Louisiana and Manhattan over the following 5 years. Those are slightly different areas, Louisiana and Manhattan.
Yeah, it's the tri-state area.
Yeah, it's the greater Louisiana Manhattan area. He focused on computers and robotics. He said he showed a passion for architecture, economics, mechanical engineering, military history, and language arts. That's a lot of things to have a passion about.
Oddly enough, all things that are front and center in SimCity.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe not language arts. That one. Wait,
there's the little newspaper.
Not until 2000.
That's kind of. Oh yeah, I guess that's true. There wasn't one in the old one, was there?
There was not.
Damn.
But yeah, so he also said he had a passion for board games that were heavy in strategy. He specifically mentioned the Japanese game Go, which a lot of people have stated as an influence for early video games, and also Avalon Hill's Panzer Blitz.
Avalon Hill put out a crazy amount of tabletop strategy games back in there. They're still around. I think they're a Hasbro subsidiary now. But they put out tons and tons of very celebrated like strategy war games back in the day.
I went to their website while I was researching this just to see what Avalon Hill is still doing. And like their catalog is almost entirely Risk and Axis and Allies. And,
it's basically
unfortunate.
It. Yeah, very, very legendary tabletop publisher.
Right. Who has been reduced to just another Hasbro label.
Another Hasbro subsidiary. Yeah. You know, on a long enough timeline, everyone becomes a subsidiary. It's just a matter of when, right?
Yeah. We'll get to that in this episode, too. So he said the reason he learned programming was because he wanted to port Conway's Game of Life to the Apple II, which, for people not familiar, is not the board game, The Game of Life.
But it's very fun. If you've never played The Game of Life, it's a very cool visual demonstration of like how generations work. It's just really cool. Look it up. I'm not smart enough to explain what the fuck it is, but it's very fun to play with.
Yeah. He originally wanted to just put that on Apple II, but then after he saw all these other incredibly talented and smart people already making Apple II games, I don't remember what all names he mentioned, but they were some of the big names of the industry at the time. He decided he would instead shift his focus on the Commodore 64. And the first game he was paid to make was called Raid on Bungling Bay, and it was one that he made for Broderbund. Mm-hmm. And famously, while he was working on the internal level editor for the game, he found that designing the maps was nearly as fun as the game himself. And of course, that's what inspired him to make SimCity.
There you go. Out of some software that he probably didn't even need to make, but did to make level designing.
Yeah.
Raid on Bungling Bay is one of those games that I've never played, but I hear about it all the time.
Only because of this.
Is that why?
Yeah, if it weren't the inspiration
because it's Will Wright and early SimCity, you're probably right. That's probably what it is.
Broderbund did commission a port to the NES as well. So if you want to try out Raid on Bungling Bay, I would say the NES version is slightly better than the C64 version.
Yeah. Was there an Atari 2600 version?
I don't believe so.
That was like super crappy. I must be thinking of something else.
Yeah. If there was, I'm not aware of it.
Yeah. Let's talk Maxis proper then.
Yeah. So Wright got together with an investor named Jeff Braun, and they formed Maxis in '87, following the release of Raid on Bungling Bay, just to put a name on Wright's development studio, so that if he made any further games, there would be a name for it, and it would be Maxis. And I found this. Braun said that he gave a requirement for the new company's name to be between 5 and 7 letters, mean nothing, be easy to remember, and contain an X, Z, or Q.
You know, I will say a lot of those rules apply to most 80s software companies. I think he was onto something.
Right?
You know, think he was out there.
And he, if I remember right, it was either his father or Will Wright's father that came up with Maxis based on those rules.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's pretty good.
You gotta love business names where they're like, oh, is it named after like something meaningful to you? Nope, just a word I came up with.
Needed a Z in it.
Just does my company Powerton. That's it. Just
no, we don't mean anything here at Dizax.
Now, see, you got X in that Saturn. That breaks the rules.
Oh no,
can't have that one. Braun would never invest in Dizax.
He said an X. He said X, Z, or Q. Has to have one of those 3.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I guess Maxis does have an X. I read that as it cannot contain those.
No. He said it had to
too hard because they're too hard to remember.
No,
that was his differentiating factor. Then
he wanted it to be an easy to remember name, but have a weird letter in it.
One of them weird letters, like a Q.
Pull out one of them
weird
reject letters.
Anyway, moving on.
So because of his previous work working on Raid on Bungling Bay for Broderbund, he was able to convince them to distribute limited copies of SimCity on C64, but they weren't really sold on the game. They didn't think that it would sell. They didn't think it was a good idea. In fact, they explicitly told him that it was a bad idea.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at, and I'm sure we talked about this in the SimCity episode a little bit, but you look at the pitch for the game on paper, and it's like, who the fuck is going to want to play this?
You draw a city and there is no goal.
And then what happens then? People move in and stuff, and they want more industrial zones.
But you might go bankrupt.
You're like, that's a game?
So you should collect taxes.
It's like it's game in the same way Excel is a game.
Right. So yeah, they did have a hard time finding a publisher for a while there.
Yeah.
And so because of that, they decided that Maxis should be a publisher. And so they started printing the game, and Broderbund helped them distribute it even after they started printing it. And the early sales were really pretty bad. The reviews were great, but the sales were not real great. But eventually people started to read the reviews and see that it was well received, and that's when the sales started to turn around. And of course, because it started to turn around, that led to their deal with Nintendo to port the game to the NES or later Super NES.
So I don't understand. Reviews were good even though they weren't selling JPEGs on the blockchain?
I know. It was a different time, Justin. This was the 80s when people actually formed the reviews off of playing the product instead of just looking at search engine optimization.
But Saturn, it's play to earn. I don't understand. Pop Saturn, tell us about before play to earn. Well, breakdown.
Right. Oh, God.
Anyway.
Yeah. So, yeah, obviously SimCity was a big success, and it led to them deciding they wanted to look at other simulators. And while most of these were developed internally, stuff like Sim Golf and Sim Isle and Sim Life and Sim Farm, some of them were rebranded titles from overseas, like Sim Tower, which we previously talked about. Also, Sim Theme Park was actually just Theme Park World, which was a game that Bullfrog made, who also ended up being bought by EA. So, not including SimCity or SimCity 2000, there were 12 Sim-branded games released between 1989 and 1996.
You know, they really, and you don't see this a lot from publishers, they really committed to this one trick thing. Like, no, we're the Sim company.
Right. And they made other games, but that was their focus.
Right.
Like, they were on that. And you occasionally saw things like that back then. Like Microprose was the strategy company. Everything they made was some kind of strategy game.
Yeah, I guess for the era, it's not that odd.
Right.
I mean, in the larger industry, they were probably still the odd man out compared to other publishers that would just publish what's making money.
Right. Yeah, they were still definitely a niche. But
yeah, but still.
Yeah, you did see some of them reach some success. Like SimAnt and SimEarth both did pretty well. And they also got home console ports eventually.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, most of them were not super great. They were pretty mediocre, if that. But yeah, they did put out some other non-sim games. I put together a list of some of the ones that I thought were notable. You've got Mysterium, which is a first-person dungeon-crawling RPG on the Game Boy with a talking ant.
Did they develop that by dartboard, you think?
I figure it had to be.
Hey, what sells? Game Boy games. What's a popular genre on the Game Boy? I don't know. First-person dungeon crawler. What kind of characters should we include? Ants. Like an anthill? No, like one big talking ant.
Yeah. Also, it came out pretty close to the release of the Game Boy. This was a very early title on Game
really?
Boy.
This rings no bells. In fact, none of these ring any bells.
Yeah, then you got Robo Sport, which is a turn-based robot fighting strategy game. You got Unnatural Selection, which is a game where you breed mutant animals and then make them fight each other. Like the Pokemans. Then you've got Full Tilt Pinball. This is the one that everybody knows.
They go straight from like peaceful economics-based games to breeding mutant animals and making them fight to the death.
Exactly.
What just jumped straight from Mr. Rogers to Judge Dredd. Here we go. We're just going to get into it.
Right. But then their most famous non-sim game is Full Tilt Pinball, which was just a collection of pinball games. The most famous of those games being Space Cadet, that would be bundled with Windows ME and XP. That was one of the Maxis games.
I played so much Space Cadet pinball.
Right?
My God, I played so much of that.
The version that came with Windows had all the Maxis branding removed. It just had Windows branding. But it is literally, it's the same game, but with slightly different graphics than the one Maxis released. It's the exact same exe file. Yeah. And then also I discovered they published Tony La Russa Baseball and Kickoff 97 under the Maxis Sports label.
Are those the only two Maxis Sports label games?
There was also a second Tony La Russa Baseball.
So 3? They made a new label for 3 games?
I believe so, yeah. That's what it looked like.
Wonderful.
They didn't even publish Sim Golf under that label. Sim Golf was just under the regular. Anyway. But yeah, there was a whole bunch of smaller titles distributed by Maxis that were developed by other companies. A lot of them were games from other countries. Like they published A-Train, which was a fairly popular Japanese simulation game over here in the West on pretty much every platform. So
yeah, wasn't that what was the company that made that?
I don't recall.
They're like a weird kind of art house publisher, aren't they?
Yeah,
or developer.
I don't. Is it Art
What's
Dink?
Their name? I feel like it's Art Dink.
It might have been Art Dink.
That sounds like what it is. Because I remember, I think it was Art Dink. Irrelevant, but I think it was.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the beginning of the end.
Yes.
So at this point, at this juncture in the timeline, Maxis has come out. They've run up through the late 90s.
Yep.
And they've just not had anything as big as
SimCity.
SimCity.
And I think
it's just...
However, SimCity was so big that it floated all of this other stuff.
Yeah.
SimCity 2000 especially, like we had mentioned it on the SimCity 2000 episode, it remained one of the top selling PC games for about a decade after it released.
And I think part of that was just also because... it was able to float them more easily because it was on everything. Like you said. I mean, it's literally on everything.
Right. At the time, it was still fairly limited. SimCity was just on PC and Super NES. Well, computers and Super NES anyway.
Right.
And SimCity 2000 was originally just on computers, but pretty quickly ported to Super NES and PlayStation, all this other stuff. So
in the 80s and early 90s, being on multiple computer systems alone, like. That was a big deal.
Oh yeah, and and I'm sure the licensing deals they had with those companies to port those games to console made them some money as well, because a lot of their games were really popular in other countries. They were one of the most popular Western developers in Japan, and they sold a ton of all their games to the point where there are original console ports in Japan of Maxis games that never even came out outside of Japan.
Yeah.
So they did do pretty well, but
I do also feel like the Space Cadet pinball contract, for the time,
Right.
I mean, video games are billions of dollars these days, but for the time, that had to have been a huge contract.
however, that contract didn't happen until after they were bought by EA.
Oh, yeah, I guess it wouldn't have, because EA was late 90s.
It was 97. June of
Yeah.
97
Oof.
is when they agreed to be acquired by EA. And the stated reason was they wanted to gain access to EA's distribution network, which that makes sense. They were like a medium-sized publisher. It had to have been hard to get their games into as many stores as they had them because they were everywhere. Like if I went to the bookstore, there were Maxis games. If I went to the department store, there were Maxis games. Obviously, game stores had them. So they were doing a great job of distributing, but that had to have cost them a ton of money for a company that wasn't that big. And Jeff Braun, who again inspired the name, he left the company after receiving a handsome payout as part of the acquisition.
I don't know about inspired the name as much as mandated the name according to
Right.
this set of rules.
Yeah, to strict guideline.
He ordered the name like you would a cheeseburger.
Right?
Yeah, I wanted this with an X in it. Thanks, bye.
I need a McDouble, but only 5 letters and with an X or a Z. There were sizable layoffs during the EA acquisition. The staff says they noted a shift in workplace culture, which always happens. and
A
is
shift in
unfortunate.
workplace culture after a major acquisition.
Yeah,
What?
especially by EA of all people.
No
I couldn't
way.
imagine it. Wright himself continued to work on SimCity 3000 with supposedly no interference at all from EA. He said he and his team basically were left to do whatever they wanted with SimCity 3000.
Mm-hmm.
And then he moved right on to The Sims.
Yes.
Which, as we mentioned on our Sims episode, it was an idea he had going back as far as 91. And despite the market testing saying it might not even be successful with Maxis' audience, EA agreed to fund the project due to the high margin expansion content that they saw.
Yeah.
They were already counting dollar signs while it was still in development, which
Oh, absolutely.
also shocking for EA,
I just can't believe that EA would do that.
right? So yeah, The Sims came out and it did well. It did ludicrously well, unprecedentedly
I would say
well.
they were correct. It probably wasn't successful with their typical audience, but it was successful with literally everyone else on Earth.
Right. And yeah, those expansions sold really well, just as predicted. Will Wright stepped away from the Sim team at that point to work on his new pet project, which he also had been thinking about for a while. And without Wright, EA and the remaining Maxis team did continue to support The Sims, and they made SimCity 4. And they also made SimCity 2, kind of. It was mostly still Maxis people making.
You mean The
SimCity
Sims
2.
2?
No, sorry, sorry. The Sims 2 was mostly Maxis people, but not entirely. Despite the success of The Sims and The Sims 2 and SimCity 4, Maxis' original studios were shuttered in 2004, with the remaining staff moved into the EA offices
For
a few cities
seemingly no reason.
over. It's weird. Their games were doing well, and then they just closed down.
To be fair, this is kind of indicative of this era of early 2000s through kind of like early 2010s of EA, of them just kind of, for no discernible reason, shuttering studios.
Yep. Yeah, just trying to consolidate everything into EA proper for a while there. That was their thing. And eventually, Wright's pet project, Spore, which was announced in 2005, finally was released in 2008, which, for people who don't remember Spore, it was very hyped. Very hyped.
Spore was like, I think the only way it could be more hyped is if Peter Molyneux made it. That's the only way it could have gotten more hype than it did.
The best hype it got was when I think it was at E3, it might have been at some other trade conference where they had Robin Williams come on stage and play it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, for people who don't know Spore, you basically get to create your own little alien life form and let them evolve from like primitive creatures all the way up to spacefaring.
They go from like a one-celled organism.
Exactly. And so you've got Robin Williams on stage creating an alien creature and just trying to put as many dicks on it as he can.
Yeah.
Because it's Robin Williams.
Right. Of course.
But yeah, so for people who don't remember Spore, it's a fine game, but after all that hype, it came out like a wet fart.
Yeah.
And it just did not get anywhere close to the sales expectations that EA had for it. And part of that was due to extremely heavy user backlash over the world's stupidest DRM implementation.
Mm-hmm.
Which, again, if people don't remember, it was a game sold on disc. This was before digital distribution was super popular. And you could install it 5 times. Originally, it was 3 times. After you installed it the 3rd time, your disc is no
EA
good.
Graciously expanded
Exactly. The original plan was you install it those 3 times, and then you throw your disc away and buy it again, even if they're all on the same computer.
What's frustrating is I feel like, well, I mean, one, yeah, that's bullshit.
Yes.
But also Spore was overhyped. It kind of had that No Man's Sky thing going for it, that Heavy Rain thing going for it, that this thing of like, it's a fun little game.
Yeah.
It's not a game changer. It's not like, oh, my world has been turned upside down by this.
It's not years of hype worth of great.
Yeah.
But it's just a fun game.
Fun little, creature simulator. It's a good time.
If it had come out with the same level of fanfare as SimCity or The Sims, I think it would have been a well-remembered game.
Yeah.
But because of all that hype and also because of EA sabotaging the game with DRM, it's remembered as a failure, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. And as you even noted in the notes, it was received well.
Yeah.
Reviews were okay. Again, they weren't like it's amazing, but it's a fun game.
Yeah, but it got like 7s and 8s. It was generally well received, and it's. I had some fun with it myself until my disc became useless because I installed it too many times.
Yeah. Let's talk Will Wright's departure and the future of Maxis.
Right. So after Spore, Will Wright decided to leave Maxis in 2009. It is always assumed because of how Spore did. And he formed a startup company called Stupid Fun Club.
Which feels so dumb because Spore was EA's fault. He made a fine game.
Yeah.
And God, all right. Anyway.
Right.
Stupid Fun Club.
So he made Stupid Fun Club. It was dedicated to toys, video games, online environments, storytelling media, and fine home care products.
That's weird.
Yep. The more you look into it, the weirder it is. Apparently, it's named after a club he was in college or something. And among the projects that Stupid Fun Club was responsible for was a TV show called Bar Karma, featuring an online story creator tool that allowed viewers to submit scenes and plot twists over the internet.
That talk about a project that could not fucking happen on today's internet.
Right?
I mean, would literally, it'd be a train wreck.
Well, 1, I think it was multiple choice. And 2, I think that you had to interact via internet terminals at bars, maybe. I think that's why it was called that, but I don't know. I don't even know how you're supposed to watch it. I don't know if it was on TV or if it was on the internet. I have no idea.
I don't understand. What's TV? Is it like Netflix?
It's like Netflix, but on your wall.
The worst possible explanation.
It's on your Facebook wall.
Oh, God.
So, following the closure of Stupid Fun Club in 2013...
It closed?
And the thing is, it didn't close because it wasn't making money or because it wasn't a success. It closed because he was bored of it.
Yeah. I would get bored of Bar Karma and fine home care products pretty quickly, too.
I think the pitch was a joke. I don't think there was actually any fine home care products. I think that was just them having fun.
Well, now I'm upset. That's false advertising.
So, since then, he has been engaged in various smaller projects. In December of last year, in 2021, he announced a new project called Voxverse, which is a metaverse project.
No, Will Wright, no, God.
Yeah, Maxis did go on to produce a game called Dark Spore. This is getting back to Maxis and away from poor Will Wright, who's working in the metaverse now. He's
left us. He's left our reality. Yeah. He's now in the metaverse.
So after Will Wright left, they made Dark Spore, which is an action RPG spinoff of Spore. And the game has since been delisted. Its activation and login servers were shut down. You can't even play it offline anymore. I have the disk for it, and if I put in the disk, it redirects me to install from Origin, and then if I install from Origin, it says, this game is no longer available and won't even let me install.
I remember even people in the know could not figure out what the fuck Dark Spore was.
Yeah.
Because immediately you see it and you're like, oh, it's a Spore expansion. That's weird. It's been years.
See, that's weird because I saw the box and didn't even think Spore. I thought it was just some generic action game. I was like, this is some kind of weird alien action game, whatever. And then
did it connect to Spore?
No, it's a standalone game. It just used the same graphics and rendering engine as Spore.
You couldn't even make your little guy in Spore and evolve him and then go play with him in Dark Spore?
I think you could import them, but I don't know because it's shut down and I can't find out.
All right.
Yeah, so thanks, EA. And then eventually EA just stopped using the Maxis logo on Sims products. It was right around the launch of Sims 3, I think just after the launch of Sims 3. They did eventually revive the brand in advance of the announcement of SimCity 2013. But then after that dumpster fire happened, EA laid off most of the Maxis staff and began shutting down studios, eventually merging what was left of Maxis into EA Mobile. So the last remnants of Maxis are now EA Mobile, making mobile games.
Great.
That team itself would be further downsized in 2018. And according to the people there, that was when the last of the former Maxis employees were gone.
Yeah.
EA has since launched 2 new studios, Maxis Texas in Austin, which was formed in 2019, supposedly to work on some new IP, as well as Maxis Europe, which was formed in 2021 to work on The Sims 4. So they have revived the name, but it is in name only.
It's dead.
There's no spirit of Maxis left.
They're just
gone.
Weekend at Bernie'sing it now.
Exactly.
They're just dragging it around and making it wave at people with a string.
Yeah, pretty much.
So that we all keep buying Sims DLC.
Right.
It's sad because I feel like, these days EA has kind of woken up to how they're actively destroying the game industry.
Right.
And I'm not going to say that they've started making, good decisions, but they've started making less bad ones.
Right, less intentionally shitty decisions.
I feel like if EA today was the company that bought Maxis back in the day, it would have gone much differently.
True, I agree.
As it is, Maxis ended up kind of going the way of all the other studios that EA bought and shuttered, like Visceral, And so it's unfortunate that it happened in this era.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
Let's talk legacy or what's left of it anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's such a huge legacy because it's hard to find many strategy or simulation game developers that don't list SimCity as an influence.
Mm-hmm.
It's just such its influence on the game industry is hard to understate. Hard to overstate.
Yeah, I'd say that SimCity is to the strategy gaming universe as Tetris is to the puzzle game universe. Yeah. Anytime you're describing it, it's a constant data point that you can always go. It's like Tetris, but the blocks go the other direction or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. Will Wright himself received the Lifetime Achievement Award at the Game Developers Choice Awards in 2001. He was also inducted into the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences Hall of Fame in 2002, and he was the only person to have received both of those honors until 2006, which...
Oh, when they gave it to David Crane.
Did they?
I hope not.
He did make Pitfall, though.
That's true, but then he made those other games later.
Yeah, well, he also made A Boy and His Blob.
Oh, yeah, he did, didn't he? What was the... Did he make a PS3 game?
I don't know.
Didn't he work on Heavy Rain? Wasn't he the Heavy Rain guy?
No, that's a different guy.
Oh, that's who I meant to make fun of then. Sorry, David Crane. Sorry, David Crane, if you're listening. I meant to make fun of the Heavy Rain guy.
David Cage.
David Cage.
Is who you're thinking of.
Yeah, there you go.
They certainly didn't give it to him.
Yeah.
The British Academy of Film and Television Arts gave Will Wright a fellowship in 2007, the first given to a game designer.
Of the Ring.
Which he's not British, so that's an extra prestige that they.
Did they notice that?
Maybe
they noticed?
maybe he grew out his beard enough that like they couldn't hear his accent. Is that how beard works? I don't know.
No, that's not how beard works.
No.
That's not.
I forgot how word works for a second there.
Yeah. As far as final thoughts, it's a shame what happened. I do hope that EA, I mean, they've got these 2 new Maxis studios. I know that no original Maxis team members are left, but we're kind of going on enough years that even if proper Maxis was still around, there probably wouldn't be a lot of original members still working. Yeah. So I'm open to them doing something new with SimCity or anything with the Sim universe.
Maybe
not the game Sim universe, but the universe of Sim games.
Or maybe they'll revive Tony La Russa Baseball.
Maybe that's it.
Or that one game where you breed animals and force them to fight each other.
I mean, I'll say this. I know we are going to see something else from SimCity.
Right.
We're just going to. It's a big property.
Hopefully not like the last one, though.
It's a big property, and they own it wholesale.
True.
They're not just going to let it not make them money.
Right.
The question is, how many NFTs can you fit into a SimCity? I guess
a lot.
That's what we need to ask ourselves.
You could build a city and then make it your own metaverse and let your friends move into it.
I'm gonna throw up right now. Just gonna throw up.
And every time you need to install a new power plant, it only costs 8,000 Sim bucks, which you can purchase by using Sim coins. And
they could sell you special, unique buildings for your city that are NFTs.
Yes.
Yeah. EA, please don't listen to this. None of this is ethical or fun.
If you want to put a Walmart in your Sim City, you can buy the Walmart NFT pack.
Oh, God, you get a discount if you have the Walmart app installed. I'm going to hurl.
And if you have Walmart Plus, they give you a second NFT for free.
Oh, God. Go play The Sims, not 4.
Yeah. Not whatever garbage we just described. Never play whatever that is.
God, go play Sim Ant. Go play SimCity on Super Nintendo.
Yes.
Maxis made a lot of good stuff.
Yes.
Go download some weird shit. Play Streets of SimCity. Drive around your city. It's a good time.
Yeah, there's so many weird sim games. Sim Farm is weird. That one's worth checking out. That's fun.
I've not even heard of Sim. I feel like every time we talk about Maxis, you name a new Maxis game that I've never. You're like, oh yeah, Sim Potato that I've never heard of. And I'm like, oh yeah, that one sounds good.
The original Sim Golf is okay. It's just a golf simulator. It's just a golf game. But the second Sim Golf game, Sid Meier's Sim Golf, that one's pretty fun. Because you design golf courses from an overhead perspective, and it is much more entertaining than the original Sim Golf.
Yeah. Well, if you'd like to check out our crowdfunding simulator, you can go to patreon.com/retrowarriors.
Where we will give you no NFTs.
I refuse to sell you an NFT. Make me. I'm going to aggressively not offer you NFTs.
Yes.
And I am not in the metaverse. You will not find me there. Don't ask, or I'll get aggressive about that. I like how I invite everyone to go to our Patreon, and then I start listing things that I'll be aggressive toward them about.
If you pledge to our show, I will yell at you.
I wonder if I put in a tier where it's like $10 a month. Justin sends you 10 seconds of him yelling at you. Like, would somebody do that? You know,
one guy would
just me like, what is your problem? Just yelling.
Why would you pay for this?
You can get uncut versions of this show. You can get Talking Wizards, which is a show that I just love to make.
Yeah.
There's a Talking Wizards channel in the Discord, and it came up today that it was Talking Wizards is basically just me and Andrew saying the dumbest stuff.
True.
We had one bit recently where it made us both just like afterward we were like, man, that made us seem really stupid, didn't it? And we were like, yeah, but it was funny. Like we just had an honest moment.
Yeah.
And then afterward we were like, what is wrong with us?
You briefly broke character.
What are we doing?
Yeah.
Anyway, we would love to have your support. We would love it if you rated and reviewed the show on anything. I don't care, something, somewhere.
Yeah.
Tell friends about the show. It does help, and come chat with us in Discord. Where it's I've realized something. other shows have Discords, but they don't run it like ours.
Yeah.
The main people that do whatever it is the Discord is related to are almost never present.
I've noticed that. Yeah. That's weird.
We're there all day, literally all day long.
Yeah, we are in there talking all day. That's our main source of socialization. So feel free to show up and you'll talk at us, unless it's the middle of the night and we're asleep. But then we'll be back.
It's not one of those weird Discords where you join and you're like, oh, I liked this guy's podcast, but he's not here and it's just all these other people.
Yeah,
it's just us.
No. And we rarely talk about the podcast itself. We talk about literally anything else in the world, though.
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah.
This is true. Anyway, we do want to thank the following patrons for their support, starting with Vince, the ShamWow guy. How kind of him to come down from his throne.
And also Neon Rocket Ship.
Sean S.
Nicholas Perfect.
Dean Schmidt.
Lee Sparkles.
Norman. It's Sparks.
Oh, my bad.
It's Lee Sparks.
Maybe I should go back to the eye doctor. My bad. Lee Sparks. Anyway.
And Norman.
And Jerry Vaz.
The New Craft.
And Retro Video Game Zone Jason.
Are all the patrons we want to thank for their support, and we want to thank you for listening to this show we did. We worked real hard on it.
We did. We almost even put news in the notes.
So really, Saturn worked hard on it, and I just coasted on his effort. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week, and as always, let us cling together.